Hey everyone, Mr. MC here. This is a guide for round 30 of the Nations Cup. Let's get this started. Take this first turn at full throttle, and then you want to bring yourself to the left side of the track. Now this is where it gets a little weird with this car. You brake just before you reach the 100 meter mark. You'll be braking hard for a short while, and as you turn in, you want to quickly ease off of the brakes and let the car cruise for just a moment before you start to apply the throttle. Wait until the car is nearly pointing where you want to go before you start to fully accelerate. Then take this chicane at full throttle, just turn in before the curb on the left ends. If you're under dirty air, or if your tires are worn out, or if you have worse tire compounds, you can do a short lift through that chicane. Now just before you hit the apex of this turn, that is when you want to start to brake, and you want to repeat the things I said from the first hairpin. Just let the car rotate, have it pointing where you want to go, and then accelerate. Do note that I short shift through first and second gears, so I can try to prevent any unnecessary wheel spin from happening. Bring yourself to the left and brake before you reach the 50 meter mark. Do not use a shadow as your braking point, as sometimes there's a blimp and the shadow of it can block that braking point. But anyways, just be nice and careful as you accelerate your way out. Then brake in between the 100 and the 50 meter mark. Bring yourself to the middle of the track and do a short lift as you make your way through this turn. You're going to take this right turn at full throttle, then the left turn at full throttle, but use the apex of the left turn as your final braking point. You want to almost repeat the process of the first and second hairpins. Just let the car rotate, but you can accelerate just a little bit earlier since the track is a little bit wider. But that is all for the lap guide. Let's go ahead and talk about the strategies. For this qualifying session, you have 10 minutes to try to get a good qualifying time. I do want to note that if you're wearing headphones or earphones as you do this race, make sure you lower the volume on them so your ears won't end up ringing after you do the race. But anyways, you kind of want to be by yourself when you do this qualifying session, and the main reason of that is because of dirty air. So the dirty air is going to be a problem with these high downforce cars, and it's a bit of an unfortunate thing because it can really help you out when you're going through the main or the back straight. You'll see what I mean when I talk a bit more about it during the race strategies part. But anyways, you pretty much just want to take it easy as you go through this outlap, since the tire wear rate is a little high, and it's a little weird saying that since these cars are pretty light, but the tire wear is still a bit of a problem. The other thing you want to do is to not hit walls like how I am. I don't know why I was hitting the walls, but anyways, once you're getting close to the final turn, that is when you want to start to speed things up and then start your flying laps. And with those flying laps, you only want to do 1 to 2 flying laps per stint, and I say that with the quotation marks, because for one last time, if you're doing Nations Cup only, you want to do the jump out and jump back in strategy. This is where you do the 1 to 2 laps, or your flying laps that is. You press options, exit, and then you press enter course if you're doing this in the lobbies, or qualifying if you're in the actual race itself. By doing this, you pretty much cut out the in-lap part, you cut out the whole animation sequence for the pit stop, and you pretty much just spawn back at the pit box with a new set of racing soft tires. So all you have to do is just go back out, do an out lap, and then you'll be able to do another 1 to 2 qualifying laps. And you're basically going to want to repeat that until you run out of time. Don't forget that this is a grid start, so you want to have the traction control at 1, and shortly after the race starts, you can then bring it down to 0 or whatever you normally have it at. So things are going to get a little crowded here, so you can go on over to the radar on the bottom right hand corner of the screen by pressing D right or left on the D-pad, plus and minus buttons on the G29 wheel. So you want to be a little mindful of those around you, know where they are, and brake just early enough so that you do not punt those in front of you, and hopefully the ones behind you don't punt you and give you a penalty. But anyways, dirty air. So the range of that is 3/4 of a second between the car ahead of you and yourself. And what that does to a high downforce car like this is that it makes it a lot more understeery. So as you see right now, I'm within the 3/4 of a second range and my car is noticeably a bit more understeery. So you do want to be careful when you're going through these turns, as it's going to be easy for you to overestimate or underestimate a turn. And because you're under dirty air, you just end up understeering into the grass and potentially ruin your own race. Especially when you go through a turn like this, you want to be especially careful because you're not going to have all the downforce that your car needs. So you want to lift out the throttle for a bit more time. And the same can be said for the chicane of death that is hanging out just after the first hairpin. Now when you're going through a high-speed section like this, like the main straight or the back straight, it's going to really help you catch up to those ahead of you. So as you see right now, there's a car behind me and I was about 0.6 of a second when we came through that final turn, and because of the slipstream, he's now right behind me. So you can definitely use it to your advantage on the main straight or the back straight to try to perform an overtake, but you just have to make sure that you time it right. And whenever you start to go through a twistier part of the track, you want to be a little more careful about how you approach those turns. But anyways, going over to the strategy section, it is looking like the 3-stop will be the way to go, but the 2-stop is also possible to pull off under the right circumstances. So going on over to the 3-stop, this is where you do 2 stints on the racing soft tires, 1 shorter stint on the racing medium tires, and only 1 one-lap stint on the racing hard tires. So with the soft stints, you want to try to go for 9 laps on the racing soft tires, and the reason why you want to go for those 9 laps is going to have to do with the feel. So it's going to be an issue in this race, and the way that you want to go with the feel is going to be a little interesting, to say the least. If you can do a little fuel saving throughout the race or throughout the first 9 laps, then it's going to be possible to refuel all the way on your first pit stop. If you pit earlier, or if you don't fuel save enough, then you're going to have to do partial refueling and you're going to have to refuel twice. Most of the fuel saving will be done when you're coming out of the sharp hairpin turns or through a good chunk of sector 3. With the hairpins, as you saw in the lap guide video earlier, you want to try to save the tires from spinning a lot, especially the rear tires, since those tires will be wearing out more. So you want to do a little short shifting from first to second to third gears, and that way you're going to be able to save a little fuel as well. So for example, through here, we're going to try to short shift just a little bit, and we're going to try to save that tire life and save a little fuel along the way. And then when you're going through this third sector, you can go up another gear. So for example, you can go up to 4th or even 5th gear through here. Just make sure you do a little lift so you don't end up spinning out. And then just before you brake for the final turn, you can go up to 7th gear before you have to brake. And if you decide to hang out behind someone and somehow stay within their slipstream, you can definitely short shift a little there as well to save a little more fuel along the way. Now here comes the very important part. I'm pitting at the end of lap 9, and if you can see the diamond, it is just shy of reaching the 100% mark. So I can either do a partial refuel, so try to fuel up half of whatever I need, or I can fuel up all the way. That way, when I go to the next 2 pit stops, I don't have to worry about refueling at all. So this is where you have to decide how much you want to refuel. If you fuel up all the way, you will end up a little behind, but you will be able to undercut those who did the partial refuel on the first pit stop. And if you do the partial refuel, it will be possible to try to get away from those doing the full refuel, but if you don't make any good progress, then they will catch up and potentially overtake you during their next or your next pit stops. So you want to try to pit at the end of lap 9, whether you're doing the 1 or 2 stop on the racing soft tires. That way you can have the option of refueling all the way, provided you did a little fuel saving. And this is one of those races where the tire order is important here just because of the refueling situation. So I would suggest to not mess around with the tire order too much without knowing what you're getting yourself into. In other words, if you're going to mess with the tire order before race day, make sure you do a test run so you know what you're getting yourself into. But overall, the 3 stop is a little faster because you're able to get an overall faster pace, faster lap times, because you're spending much more time on the racing soft tires. And when it comes to the 2 stop, the tire order is also important here. So you either want to start on the soft or medium tires. You do not want to start on the racing hard tires because of the refueling situation. If you start on the racing hard tires, you will be forced to refuel twice. If you start on the racing soft tires and do 9 laps, or if you start on the racing medium tires and do 9 to 11 laps, then you will have the option of being able to refuel all the way if you want to go that way. The only thing here is that you're spending more time on the racing medium and hard tires, so your times are going to be a little slower, and you want to be careful with the racing medium tires when they're worn out, as the car is going to become a lot more sketchier than the racing soft tires when they're starting to wear out. So when you're accelerating out of turns, and especially when you're going through sector 3, you want to be really careful on your throttle input. But if you're starting in the back, you can think about using this strategy to try to undercut those doing the 3 stop, as they'll be spending a bit more time at the pit stop. So if you're able to get a squeaky clean race, and if they make little bits and errors here and there, you have a chance of catching up to them and overtaking them. And especially if they're not done with their 3rd and final pit stop, then you're going to be at the advantage in the end. And that's actually what ended up happening in this race, because our friend VQS Hallman over here in 2nd place actually went with the 2 stop. I went with the 3 stop. I made mistakes here and there, and he ended up overtaking me while I was pitting. So once again, if you're starting in the back, it is definitely possible to pull off the 2 stop, but just be aware of the tire wear issues that you'll be facing. But that is pretty much it. This is a really interesting race with some really weird strategies. Hopefully this helps you out. Hopefully this gives you an idea of how you want to go about this race. But that is pretty much it for this Nations Guide and for the 2020 FIA Nations Guides. So yeah, that's it's actually really weird to say that it's over. I'm going to have to find out what the heck I'm going to do now with all this free time on my hands, because this testing sometimes literally took me all day, and then the editing would take all night, and sometimes I fell asleep while editing. But yeah, I'm gonna have to find out what to do. Maybe a little Assetto Corsa, maybe a little lobby racing, just racing with you guys. Definitely not sport mode racing with the penalty system right now, because it is utter bad words here. But anyways, I'm going to go ahead and find out what the heck to do now. So I'm going to go ahead and sign off now. But this is Mr. MCA, thanking you all for tuning in to these videos, and I'll see you in the next video.